Hey guys, TommyBryson here, and welcome back to the channel. And one thing about money and poverty and not knowing anything about money is that poverty tends to be a symptom of poor money management. And a lot of people don't understand that. They just basically think that, well, if I don't have any money and I am in poverty, it's just because I'm not lucky and because I just grew up here and I have to stay here. The truth is, there are things you can actually do to improve your situation, and that way you can stop being poor. But there is one thing I learned along the way, and it's that I grew up in a third world country. And I grew up around what most people believe are a lot of poor people. And that is very true. We did not have money whatsoever. But when I went to New York for the first time and I saw what I thought was basically rich people, people with mansions, people with BMWs, people with fancy suits, people with gold chains, I was like, wow, this is what rich people actually look like. But then I discovered that these people were one paycheck away from not having any money. So that kind of told me, no, money is not going to be what you see in a person. You can't tell physically just if someone is actually rich or just spent all their money buying things trying to look rich. It's kind of like trying to look at me right now without a haircut and saying, Tommy, why would I take your advice? You yourself look like you're struggling. The answer is, I may look like this, but I am not struggling, and I'm very happy to say that. But in this video, I'm not just going to tell you what poor people don't know. I'm also going to give you books, because I really do believe that if you watch this entire video, you're going to walk out knowing more than 90 to 80% of all the people out there. And if you read the books I'm going to recommend to you guys, you're going to be basically a part of the 3% when it comes to knowing the correct information about money. And lastly, if you apply this information, it can truly change your life and make you wealthy. Not look wealthy, but actually be wealthy. So without further ado, let's get right into this video, and do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. On top of that, also smash the like button. I really do appreciate it, and it does go a long way with the YouTube algorithm. Now, the very first thing that poor people don't know about money is going to be that money equals time. Money equals energy. And when you really do understand this, when you actually comprehend it, you're going to take money a lot more seriously, because everyone complains about not having money, but they also spend it on garbage. And I think it's because people don't respect money because they don't know the true value of money. And the value of money doesn't come from it being a piece of paper. It comes from what you need to do to get that piece of paper. Now, let me explain. People go to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We spend a third of our entire life working a job trying to get money. Now, that basically means that when you say money is not important, money is not a big deal, I'm just going to buy this, who cares? I'll just make more of it. The answer is no. What you're really doing is you're trading your time, which is finite because eventually you will run out of time, for paper, for money, to be able to buy things. And when you comprehend that, everything changes, because you start to really think about what you're actually doing with your money. So, two things happen. One, when you get this, you're going to take money more seriously. Two, when you understand this, you're going to try to earn as much money as possible. Let me explain this, okay? If you're working a job right now and you make 20 bucks an hour, and you choose to go out there and purchase a $30,000 vehicle, well, that's about 187 work days that car is costing you. It's crazy. It's not worth it. If you go out there and buy the latest iPhone for $1,000, that's 7 days of working that's actually costing you. If you go out there and go on a fancy vacation and spend $2,000, that's 14 days it's actually costing you. Now, those are big examples, right? So we actually don't actually see how it happens on a daily basis. But when I started thinking this way, I started seeing this in everything I did. When I was basically going out there and getting meals every single day, eating out at 7-Eleven, it was costing me my time. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't spend your money on things because you could be using that money to work more or to spend more hours at work. That's not the point. The point is, don't spend your money on garbage and things you don't need because it's costing you time. So because money is such a serious thing, it's better to utilize it to actually get financial independence. I'll talk more about that later. But the second thing that's going to happen once you understand how serious money is you're going to try to make as much money as possible with as little time as possible. Let me explain, okay? If you make 20 bucks an hour, you're making about almost 3 times more money than I did a couple years ago when I was making 8 bucks an hour. Now that's because you have a skill, and the better your skills are, the more money you're actually going to make. When I was younger, I used to believe that the whole idea about getting a job was just to find happiness, to find my purpose, and everyone kind of says that. But the truth is that when it comes to wages, basically working for money, it's all about money. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm being selfish, but it really is just about money. You're trying to get a skill to earn as much money as possible for your time so you can work less, so that you can utilize that money to get financial independence, so then you don't have to trade your time for money. Here's a good example. I have 2 friends. One I don't talk to anymore, but she's still relevant in this way for this example. And she loves her job and she gets paid $15 an hour. She went to college. She has a whole bunch of student loan debt. And I tell her, why do you work there? It makes no sense. You are not earning the maximum capable amount that you possibly can. And her response is, I'm happy here. Well, guess what? Your happiness, honestly, is irrelevant because you are trading your time for money and you are not getting its value. And 30 years from now, when you spend a third of your life working at this job and they fire you or they cut or they lay off or the company's not around anymore, none of those things are going to matter if you have to go ahead and get another job. My second friend, he works at a company I won't really mention, but he makes a lot of money, a little bit over $200,000. And he tells me all the time, Tommy, I'm not here because I like it, man. I'm here on business. I'm here to make as much money as possible so I can get financial freedom. I used to say a lot because of this whole Gary Vee movement and this whole find your purpose movement and this whole work is where you get happiness movement, that no, I want to find my purpose in a job. I want to do something that makes me happy. Guess what? Work is not just trading your time for money. Work can also be spending time with your friends, spending time with your family, going to church. Those are things that I don't care about money when I'm spending my time on. But when I'm getting wages, literally trading time for money, I want to maximize it as much as possible. So take your time very seriously. The poor idea of, hey, money is not important, and they don't know this, that money is equal to time, is going to change your life. When you understand that, you're going to try to make as much as possible, meaning don't just go to college because I love this job, I always wanted to have it. No, if you're going to go to college or get a trade job or get a certificate or go train somewhere or get whatever job you want, just make sure it's going to earn you as much as possible. I'm not telling you to be miserable, but I am telling you to have that idea in mind. And then take money seriously. Don't just say, I buy whatever I want. What's the big deal? It's just money. No, it's your time. Every time you spend 20 bucks, that's an hour you are not going to get back. That's why when I'm spending money, if I'm trying to buy a car, if I'm trying to get an iPhone, if I'm trying to go on a vacation, I'm going to save as much as I possibly can to do it responsibly without the debt stuff. And I'm also going to try to get the best deal. That's why I buy used cars for like 50% off. That's why I buy used phones for like 70% off. And that's why when I go on vacation, I book months in advance to save more money. Because the more money I save, the more time I save. And the more money my money can make me. Thus, I don't need to work those hours anymore. That's the first thing you need to learn about money. Now, for this, I'm going to recommend a book, and it's called Your Money or Your Life by Vicky. And this book is so powerful, and it teaches you exactly how to calculate your time and how to value money. It's going to change your whole perspective, and it's going to go into much more detail than I did in this video. I highly recommend it. Now, the second thing that poor people don't know about money is that investing is simple, but that does not mean that it's actually easy. If I told you losing weight is simple, just basically exercise and don't eat that much, the answer is yeah, simple, but it's not easy to actually do. And one thing about people overall, including myself, is people are greedy. They want to make as much money as possible as fast as possible, even though it might mean losing everything and risking everything. And we also tend to think we deserve things that we actually don't deserve. You know, one big thing I saw was during the pandemic of 2020, I saw how people went from basically asking for help to demanding that they get, for example, stimulus packages, and they also get their debt forgiven. I've also seen people lose their job and their employer choose to give them some money for some time to actually get back on their feet. And then I've seen those people basically turn around, sue the employer, and demand they keep giving them money without working anymore. That's how we actually are as humans. We are like that. If you don't believe that, trust me, if you spend enough time investing, you're going to have to try to fight those urges. So here's what I do as an investor, and I've been investing for almost a decade now, which sounds crazy, but it is true. And when I first started investing, I started with just $7. You don't need a lot of money to invest, believe me. The only way you can find money to invest is going to be by spending less than you make. You can't invest if you don't have extra money, and you can't have extra money if you don't manage your money by having a budget. If people tell me all the time, for example, I don't have extra money to invest, but if you look into their finances, what you'll be able to see is that they spend money on things that they really don't even care about. They have $200 worth of subscriptions that they don't really care about, and they have a whole bunch of clothes they keep buying that they don't even use. So there is money to be saved to be actually able to invest. Now, what would I invest into? Well, I'll tell you what I invest into right now. I invest into the S&P 500 with the Vanguard broker. I use Vanguard to invest into the S&P 500. Now, if you want to, you could also buy a target date fund over at Vanguard. These are funds that basically allow you to just keep investing money, and they're matched with your retirement age, and they change as you get older. Now, the reason I choose to invest into index funds and not individual stocks is very simple. If you buy a piece of a company, an individual company, if that company loses, you lose everything. But when you're buying multiple pieces of several different companies, if one company goes down, you still have more companies, which is actually great. So by investing in the S&P 500, I'm buying the 500 largest companies in the US, and that basically means I'm diversified in that way. If Facebook goes bankrupt tomorrow, I still have another 499 companies, and another company is going to come up and take Facebook's place. That's the entire idea. Now, how much money would I start investing? I rarely tell people to invest more than 10% of their income because, again, we are greedy. And when I show people what compound interest can do, they want to invest 20% and 50%. But then when something happens, they end up taking all the money out. So you want to avoid that. It's better just to start small. So I would just do like 10% and start off there. Now, here's an example. I'm going to be using a compound interest calculator to share with you guys how powerful money actually is and why you actually don't need that much money. So let's say that right now all you have is $1,000, and I'm going to put it right here. We have current principal, annual addition, years to grow, interest rate. And it's going to tell me exactly how much money I'm going to have if everything goes according to plan. So if I start off with $1,000, because I only have $1,000 right now, but I'm going to be investing every single month about $300 or so, that's going to equal about $3,600 in a year. Now, you might tell me, Tommy, I don't have $300. Well, the average salary in the US is about $3,600 a month, basically. So in reality, this is just about 8% of your income every single month. So if you don't know where that money is going to come from, you have to get a budget because most likely the money is there, or maybe 200, okay? But $3,600 was about $300 a month. And let's say you just do this for about 10 years and you make 8%, because again, you can't expect to make a large return when you are not taking that much risk. And you don't want to take that much risk because you might lose your money. That's the whole idea. So don't be greedy. So when you click calculate here, in 10 years, you're going to have $58,000. People might say, Tommy, that's not a lot of money. I want more money. And the idea is, if you want more money, you're going to have to invest more money. But just be patient because compound interest is very powerful. So if you start at 25, 10 years later, you have $58,000. Now let's say you say, hey, what if I keep investing for the next 30 years, right? And that way now you're about 65 years old. The answer is in 30 more years, you're going to have about $1 million. That is big. That is massive. But it's also not attractive. It's not sexy. And most people want sexy. They want to go out there and they want to buy a stock and they want to be rich tomorrow. And that's why most people are broke. So you have to understand that, yes, money is simple, but it is not easy. And the not easy part is this. It's spending 10 years investing, 20 years investing. And it's not like you're going to be investing and everything is going to be perfect. You might lose your job. Someone might not make it in your family. The stock market might crash. You might have a graph like this where we have big ups and big downs, but the market has recovered every single time. So what you need to do is just be patient. Now, I'm going to recommend a book for this, and that book is going to be the book on common sense investing by John C. Bogle. It is such a powerful book because it teaches you about investment principles in a very basic way so you can actually understand it. You don't need to complicate things. You don't need to be looking at Forex charts. You don't need to be day trading. All those things are pretty much irrelevant when you're trying to build wealth over a long period of time. When you see people very excited about those things, you ask them how much money you have, and usually they're not wealthy. And if they are, they tend to be wealthy by selling people courses and selling people these ideas. So be very careful. Do not fall into the greed temptation. Now, the third thing that poor people don't know about money is that debt is a very dangerous tool. And I want to establish something. If you don't have the title for the thing you're claiming that you actually own, you don't own it. If you basically haven't paid for that item in cash, you don't own it. And let me explain this, okay? If you have a house and it's mortgaged, if you have a car and it has a loan, if you have stocks on margin, those things are really not yours. They belong to the people that actually lend you the money. If you don't believe me, look into the 1930s and the Great Depression that actually happened. During the Roaring 20s, which was basically when America was basically just going crazy and spending a lot of money, buying a lot of real estate with debt, and basically buying stock on margin. It's basically when you buy stock with borrowed money. And they were also buying cars with debt also. When the Depression came and they were wiped out, guess what? The banks took back the houses. The cars were taken back also. And their stocks were basically gone. The point is, debt can be a powerful tool in the sense that you can use it responsibly for some things, but it's almost something you want to avoid if you don't need to use it. Now, let me explain this, okay? I don't have a single ounce of debt. I've paid over $70,000 worth of debt, and I don't plan on going back into debt, and I plan on living this way. Now, you might say, Tommy, it's not possible to live debt-free. It's not. You need to buy a car, you need to buy a house, you need to get stuff, and those things you need to use credit cards. Now, whenever I hear those words, what I think back to is when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I had a history teacher, and they basically taught me this story, okay, which is history, so it's not a story, it's like real life. But it was basically when the Spanish first came to the Caribbean, they would trade with the native people mirrors and pieces of glass for gold. And I found it funny back then because, I know what the value of gold is. It's a lot more valuable, extremely more valuable than a piece of glass or a mirror, obviously. You would never trade that, right? But today, we do that exact same thing. We basically grab pieces of plastic, which are credit cards, and we go out there and we buy junk we basically don't need. We take loans for things we don't need. We buy houses that are too big, and we take on all this debt. And then what do we trade for it? Money, which again is our time, which is gold, because we can't get enough of it, okay? It is finite. It is not an unlimited amount. And then here we are. We're basically getting junk that we don't need, and we're trading something we do need, which is valuable. It's time, and we will never get it back. So it's very important you try to avoid debt. It is possible to buy a car without debt. Just save up for it and buy a piece of junk if you have to in the meantime that is safe and reliable. Toyota 2010, Toyota 2015, those cars are awesome. I say a piece of junk because you probably won't like it, but it works and it's fine. I just read a comment today about a guy that had a Mazda 3, I think it was, for the past 15 years, and now he's financially free, and he's like, I want to buy a fancy car, but I don't even like cars, he says, right? And I'm like, then don't buy a car. A car is just a tool. And because you have a fancy hammer, it doesn't make you fancier. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't add to your character. Use it as tools. Get what you need and try to get the best deal possible. That's the whole idea. But Tommy, what about a house? I can't just buy a house. The answer is that's one of the only things you're probably going to have to borrow money for. But I recommend you do it responsibly. When you take on no money down loans for mortgages and you have these massive loans stretched out over 30 years, people often think that, hey, it's just a minimum payment, right? But the answer is you've cut out all the flexibility out of your life when you think about it. Because now you signed up for a 30-year mortgage. That's 30 years that you also tied up your income, that now you are responsible for earning that much money at your job and giving it to the bank. Again, time. So what's the best way to buy a house? Well, the idea is, for me at least, I would save up at least 10 to 20% as a down payment. And I would also buy a home on a 15-year mortgage where the expenses of the home, including the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, the maintenance, are no more than 33% of my net monthly income. Do you know why that is? Because I realized this a long time ago. If I'm able to buy a home on a 30-year mortgage, I'm able to buy a much larger home, right? Because basically it's going to be a smaller payment. But that also means I'm going to be tied into this loan and I'm not going to own the house for over 30 years. It's absolutely insane. But if I buy a home and it's only a third of my monthly income, it's not that much, right? If I lose my job, I can always find a third of what I used to make. Now, it also means that if it's a 15-year mortgage, and I could actually pay more towards it, and in 10 years or 12 years, I'm basically done with the house, and it's fully mine, and it's fully paid off. Now, there's also something very important that I want to mention in this video. All of this video is not about this, and it's that houses are not investments, and you need to know that. But they are a very important purchase because houses are not going to make you rich because they have expenses associated with them. However, having a home that's fully paid off is going to limit the amount of money you actually need to earn every single month because it's going to be paid off and you don't have to go to work to earn that mortgage payment or earn that rent payment, which is actually a big deal. And it also means that if you come upon bad times, like you lose your job or the economy is down, you are a lot less stressed because you don't have to earn that much money anymore, which is actually a massive deal. And it also means that you don't need as much passive income. So it could actually cut the amount of money you need invested in half, sometimes even more. If I had a mortgage, I would probably need more than $2 million a year, like $2 million in my investment account to be able to cover all my expenses, but I don't. because my expenses can be as low as less than $1,000 a month, which is actually awesome for me. And I do have a wife. I don't live alone. I'm not single. So those things don't really matter. They're not a factor. Now, there's also something else I want to add here. And it's that I notice that people tend to make excuses for their life. I've done that too, which is basically when you tell people you don't need debt, they tell you about all the circumstances when they actually needed debt, they tell you about all the benefits of using a credit card. And what they're actually doing is they're providing a defense for their life. And if you keep doing that, what's actually going to happen is nothing's going to change. You're going to keep doing the same exact thing. Your life is going to stay the same, and you're not actually going to improve. So what I've learned is I try not to defend the things I do. I try to actually be open to actually see, okay, so how can I make this work? That's the main idea. So I don't have any debt. And if I can pay for a house in cash, I probably will. But if I end up having to get a mortgage, I would do it under those circumstances. So that way I can pay it off as fast as possible. Remember, you don't own something if you still owe it. It sounds like common sense, but people don't understand that. People think just because they have a home, that is theirs. A car is theirs. Stop paying it. You'll see exactly who it belongs to. And a great book I recommend that shares a lot of good ideas on this is called The Barefoot Investor. After I read that book, that's when I took action and I paid like over $70,000 off worth of debt. Because for the longest time, I was just, no, why pay? It's just low interest. It's not a big deal. But after I read that book, everything clicked. And I hope it clicks for you in this video. But if it hasn't, I recommend you read that book because it's going to make sense of everything I'm basically saying here. Now, the fourth thing that poor people don't know is that the joy of money does not come from spending it. The people that tell you that going on vacation and spending money is going to make you happy, they're liars, because when you come back to reality and you have to spend another 20 weeks to then go back on vacation, you realize very quickly it probably wasn't worth it. On top of that, people tell you it comes from having a big home, but then you're trapped in a 30-year mortgage, you have a big house, you have more cleaning to do, and a lot more issues when things break down. But it might come from a luxury vehicle, but when it breaks down, the parts are more expensive, it gives you issues. That's not where the joy of money comes from. It does not come from spending. It comes from the freedom financially that money provides you. It allows you not to have to keep trading your time for money. Now, early on, I realized that what I thought rich people actually were was a lie. I thought that money was for spending it. People have aspirations to become wealthy, not because they actually want to have $1 million, but just because they want to spend $1 million. But then I read a book, and in that book, I realized that basically the average millionaire, their favorite car or vehicle is actually a Ford F-150. Followed after that is going to be Toyota, Mazda, and also Honda. You see, there's no Audis, there's no Mercedes, there's no European cars, there's no Cayenne Porsches, no Lamborghini, none of that stuff, because in reality, that's not what they shoot for. Rich people don't spend more than they make. That's why they're wealthy, because they invest the surplus to make them more money. They have regular 9-to-5 jobs when they were actually building their wealth, and they did not inherit their money. And guess what? They're very happy living in normal homes next to middle-class people, very happy going to restaurants and eating some tacos and taking, for example, butter with them because they like butter. Sounds weird, but if you read this book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley, you're going to understand what I'm saying. The perspective we have about joy comes from spending is not true. If you basically just spend your life trying to acquire what's best, what's latest, what's the greatest, you're going to spend all your money on things you don't need, and you're not going to have any money. Now, because we understand now that money is important, whenever you get joy from spending it, it's the same as saying, I get a lot of joy from wasting my time. You know, it's insane. You wouldn't say that, right? Who gets joy from wasting their time? You should get joy from investing your time, investing your money, and that way you no longer have to work. I saw a video a long time ago where a mom explained that to a baby, If you take them to Disney World, they don't know about that stuff. If you take them to help you with the laundry, to do a few chores, to them, it means the same exact thing. It is still joy. It is still spending time with your family in a way, right? So the idea that to have happiness, you need to spend and just spend beyond your means is absolutely ridiculous. And I hope you don't have to experience that, because I do see a lot of people that basically they bought into that lie and they went on all the vacations. They bought the fancy home. They even had, for example, the fancy women that took half their money and half of everything they had, because it wasn't really relationships and marriages built on God, but instead built on greed and so on. Okay, so be very careful with that. And here's the action you actually want to take here. Learn to value money for what it actually gives you. And it's going to give you the freedom to no longer have to trade your time for money. When I see, for example, that I have a certain amount of money in my investment account, I'm not really crazy about the amount. I'm more crazy about what it provides me, which is basically saying I have freedom. If I choose to take money out, I can choose to take money out for the next 33 years, knowing that I'm going to be risk-free, not having to keep working and trading my time for money. That is awesome. Now, I could grab my money, buy a fancy car, a fancy house, go on a few vacations, and then boom, all the money's gone. Now I have all the stuff, no money, gotta go back to work, and that's the next 20, 30 years. It doesn't make any sense, you see. So again, read that book, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley. It's absolutely going to change your life. It's going to tell you exactly who the rich people in America actually are, how they got rich, and what they actually do. Because we tend to get our information not from surveys, not from science, not from statistics, not from actual information and data and facts. We tend to get our information by social media. We tend to think that if you're not 20 and rich, you are a loser. If you're not rich and spending all your money, you're a loser. Wealth is spending. Wealth is showing off. Wealth is just buying things. That's not true. That's not what rich people actually do. And that book is going to show you that. It's going to change your life. Now, here's the fifth thing that poor people don't know. That more money in incapable hands is not going to make a difference. And what that means is we tend to think that we have a shortage of money problem. The reason I'm not wealthy, the reason I'm not well off is just because I don't have enough money. If I had more money, only then could I change my circumstances. The truth is that that's not true. And you see it everywhere. You see people that they made a little bit of money, now they make a lot of money, and they're still trapped because they just keep buying more stuff that they don't need. And if they lose their job, they have nothing. You see people that basically pay the lottery for years and years and years, don't win anything, but then they finally win, and then 5 years later, they're back to being broke. Here's something I haven't shared in a long time, but I'll share it here in this video, and it's that you have to start with what you have to then be able to build up to more. And that kind of just sounds like common sense, right? You start from the bottom, you go to the top. But we tend to be at the bottom, and we tend to just want to skip all the steps and go straight to the top. I started budgeting when I was making $240 a month after I lost my job, because that's all the money I had. And I was like, I'm not going to wait until I make more money or more money comes, because if I can't manage this money, it won't matter. It just won't matter. 2, I started investing not when I had a lot of money, but just when I had just about $7 to invest. Once I really understood investing, that was my first investment, $7 into a few index funds here and there. But here's something else. I paid off over $70,000 in debt because I got the information and I learned along the way. And I also, right now, I'm proud to say this, but it's not like something you should be shooting for at my age, right? So I'm a part of the 1% when it comes to net worth in my age bracket. Now, I say this because it's important. A lot of people make a lot of money during a period of time and they spend it all and they have nothing to show for it. It's very important you try to avoid that. Use your good earning years to save, to invest, to build up a foundation. So that way you have something. Now, I tell you not to try to shoot for where I am today in my age bracket with my income, because I'm in a very weird situation. I work here on YouTube. I make content. It's a very strange job for the most part, but it's like being a baseball player. Here in Dominican Republic, every little boy's dream is to become a major league player. But guess what? A lot of them, not a lot of them, very few of them actually go ahead and make it, and they get a lot of money, and then you see them back here with nothing because they spend all the money. So it's a very short period of time where you're able to earn a lot of money. But it means for the rest of your life, you should have learned how to invest the money during that period. So I'm telling you, I may be in the 1% now, but my whole job now, because eventually my income is going to drop substantially, potentially. But my whole point now is I have to learn to manage what I have so I have when I'm older, when I'm no longer able to make these videos and so on, right? It's very important. You have that perspective, that mind. Now, here's an example, because we tend to think that more money is going to fix everything. You have a lawyer. A lawyer earns maybe $200,000 a year. And this lawyer has a fancy house or a fancy apartment in Manhattan, a fancy luxury vehicle, maybe a Mercedes, maybe a BMW, has a lot of lunches he goes to, is paying $200, $300, has fancy suits, fancy watches, and is just a part of a lot of things. And he has maybe $1,000 or $10,000 in his checking accounts. This person is poor. They don't have anything, okay? Because they have nothing to show for it. Same thing with someone that makes $40,000 working in an office, and they have a car loan, a crazy mortgage, a lot of credit card debt. They're also poor. Both are poor, but one might be more obvious, right? Because only 40K, you can't really afford those things that tell that you look rich, right? But the guy that's also a lawyer is also equally broke. It's not a money situation. It's a capability situation. If you can't manage the little you have, you will never be trusted with more. And if you do get more by chance, you will end up actually losing it. And you want to avoid that. Now, here's my last piece of advice that I want to share with you guys, okay? Once you understand that money is time, that money is energy, you also have to understand this, that it also means that money is not free. So you're not supposed to take, for example, all the opportunities to make a lot of money. Now, here's what I mean. It sounds weird, right? Because this whole video is just about money, maximizing it, saving it, investing, and getting to the top in a way, right? Which is good. But here's the issue, right? If you're working a job right now and you're making, for example, a good amount of money, and you're able to invest and you're able to work towards your goal, and you're still able to spend time with your family and still have a life, because most people do not have a life, okay? More on that maybe in the next 30 seconds. But a lot of folks don't have a life. If you're able to have a life with a job and they offer you a position to make an extra $20,000 or $30,000, and then it takes away your life where your whole life is going to be your job, I would not take it. Because again, if you trade more time for money you don't need, it is still a bad investment. Basically saying, if all you need is what you have right now to work towards your goal, and you're able to spend time with your family, but your boss offers you another job that basically takes time away from your family, and you're not going to be able to basically like grow up with your kids in a way, don't take it. It's not worth it. Just keep working on what you're doing and keep building also with your family. Don't make those trade-offs. Remember, money is money. This whole thing is a goal, but always remember, like, the family part is so important. I see so many people just focus on money that they forget the essence of things. Here's an example. I'm here on YouTube making videos, right? But I could be doing a lot more things to maximize my income. I could be posting on TikTok. I could be posting on Instagram. I could have multiple courses, multiple books, speaking engagements, a lot of sponsors and this. But then that might mean I may not have as much time with my wife. I may not have the free time to go visit my grandma and my grandpa. And I'm going to make more money, but if I don't need it, what's the point? Okay? And here's the book I'm going to recommend for you guys. This book is called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it'll teach you a lot of the values of money, the principles and the basics and the essentials. Because at its core, money has been the same for ages. It's been the same formula. It's just, again, it's simple, but it's hard to apply it. So I hope this video has actually helped you in some way. I hope you actually listened to it all the way through. And when I say people don't have a life, I mean it. People work 8 hours a day, spend 4 to 6 hours on a smartphone, and they have like 3 hours left after the day, and they spend that maybe watching TV or commuting or whatever. When you really examine your life, you have to consider, is this the life I really want to live? People buy expensive homes and they don't even live in it. They just sleep in it, okay? It doesn't make sense. But that's how things work these days. But you don't have to live that way. And again, if anything I said in this video kind of feels like a punch or like you want to debate with me, you can debate. You're free to debate in the comments down below. I'm going to answer questions. But for the most part, question things. Why do I think this way? Does this make sense? Can I change this? Because if all you do is defend your circumstances, you're not going to change it. That's the honest truth. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified. If you like these long format videos, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll make more of it. See you next time. Peace. Long-term team out.